Ladies, gentlemen, James Gunn has done it again, and he's replied to a bunch of questions on Twitter, and it's opened up the door to just a little bit more clarity. But as I always say here with the DC Universe side of things, it's like when you get more clarity or the more answers you get, the more questions you kind of have at the same time. So I've compiled a bunch of the replies that James Gunn has done over the past few days, and he gets into the misconception around Superman's age not actually being mid-20s or 25 years old. So we're going to talk about that, Batman's age, a little bit of Wonder Woman later on, also just the situation surrounding Superman Legacy, how it was actually in the works, alongside Henry Cavill appearing in Black Adam. And I would have to say, one of the more interesting aspects of this video, of which we're starting off with initially, is James Gunn gave major teasers for a certain amount of characters on a list of 8 characters that could be appearing in the DCU. Well, actually will be appearing, but I'm going to need your feedback as to whom out of this 8 you think it could be. So I hope you go ahead and enjoy this video, guys. If you want to be up to date with the latest and greatest with DC, all things DC, then this is the place for you. Do consider subscribing if you are brand new here. So before we get into some of the other tweets, as I just aforementioned, with James Gunn talking about Superman Legacy, on my screen over here, we've got one particular response here from James Gunn that's got a lot of fans talking. So Bleeding Cool, some of you may be familiar with their outlet, they essentially put a post on Twitter with regards to 8 DC heroes we would hope to see in live action films. And James Gunn replied, would 4 of 8 do? And he's basically saying there, okay, 4 of these on the list are going to be appearing. And he's actually done this before, I believe, with IGN. Before we get into that list, and trust me, we're about to get into it, I want to include a couple of other things before we guess who could be the actual characters appearing out of that list. So one user asks, will we get any major casting announcements in the next 6 months? And Gunn replies, yes. Now, I think given that Superman Legacy is coming out in 2025 and what we're going to talk about a little bit later in this video, Superman is potentially a possibility, especially with how far along that script is. But also, to be fair, there are other, projects like Creature Commandos that is in production right now, and who knows, maybe the Wallace series, they have some castings that they could get into there. A little teaser of this recently is everyone's keeping an eye on Frank Grillo, who was in the MCU, and he posted on his Instagram story, the only constant in life is #change, and with a massive logo of, the DC logos. So who could he be playing? People were like, oh, could he be Deathstroke? Oh, could he be this person? Who could he be that person? To be honest, I could imagine him being quite a bunch of people, but again, without diving too far down this alley, we are getting some major casting announcements apparently in the next 6 months. With regards to one of the 8 that we're about to get into, a user asks, have you ever read New Teen Titans by Marv Wolfman and George Perez? James Gunn replies saying, grew up with it, Marv Wolfman was my hero. And this is what I've been saying ever since we've heard a little bit about Nightwing here and there in the DCU. We already know that Batman, or should I say the Bat family in the Brave and the Bold movie, there's going to be an extended Bat family. We had James Gunn and Peter Safran saying they've been left out of the theatrical spotlight for far too long. It did seem as though, especially even after the cancellation of Titans on HBO Max, that James Gunn was liking tweets left, right, and center saying, oh, I think and I trust that James Gunn will have plans for Nightwing very, very soon in the future. And lo and behold, it's kind of obvious that Nightwing is going to be a thing in the DCU. Now, in this list, finally we're getting to this list from Bleeding Cool, of which James Gunn said, how about 4 of 8? So basically half of the characters in this list that you're seeing on screen right now will be appearing in the DCU. Now, I've got a feeling as to a few of them. Obviously, some of them feel obvious. One that we can eliminate right away, I'm very confident about this, is Dick Grayson, Nightwing. I think most of us can agree on that, if not all of us can agree that Nightwing, or just Dick Grayson in general, but probably by the time Brave and the Bold picks up in Bruce's life, Dick Grayson would likely already have taken the mantle of Nightwing. It is possible he could be on the precipice of Nightwing as Damian Wayne comes in, but it's likely that he's recently left Robin behind. But the other candidates for the 4 of 8 who could be appearing in the DCU is Terra, Superman as in John Kent's Superman, Arsenal, Roy Harper, very interesting because if you know me, you'll know that I want a freaking Green Arrow in live action. Green Lantern as in Carl Rayner, Green Lantern, Vixen, Then we have Batgirl, Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, and then finally Static. So obviously, any of our guesses could be right here. 4 of these 8 are going to be in the DCU. I would love one of them to be Arsenal because of Green Arrow, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Another user said a little while back now, James, do you like Vixen? And he replied, yes, a lot. That doesn't really mean anything in terms of me putting evidence into Vixen being on this list, but I will say that one of the 4 on my list is, Nightwing, but also Vixen next. Now, the next up, I would say, would be Cassandra, as in Cassandra Cain, Batgirl. Now, a kind of similar piece of evidence here, but you can't properly use it for evidence because you could still kind of be wrong, but you get my point. Wayne G on Twitter said, you did say Cassandra is your favorite Batgirl. And James Gunn replied saying, well, it's a toss-up with Babs, but, Cassandra and her mask are very cool. And he posted a bunch of cool images of Cassandra's Batgirl. So I would say and surmise that number 3 on the list is Cassandra. So far, my list out of these 4 of 8 is Nightwing, Cassandra, and Vixen. So who is the 4th? Oh man, I really don't know. Again, my selfish side wants to say Arsenal. I really do. But I think I'll probably, as I'm looking at this list right now, land with Static. I mean, we're getting lanterns anyway with regards to the Lantern show, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. I mean, of course, he did say there would be other lanterns sprinkled in there, and that's why I'm not really focusing on the Lantern on this list. John Kent, I don't really see why John Kent would be in the universe anytime soon. We're about to get into the Superman age stuff in a minute, but I don't think, Clark's going to have a kid right now. Like, do you know what I mean? This is an 8 to 10 year plan. They're going with somewhat younger actors, and again, that's the whole debate of what's going on at the minute. But even if they're not like super young, again, I don't expect John Kent right now. So I think we can more or less deduce the list there. But let me know if you agree or disagree with me. Would love to know your thoughts. And it is quite funny because when this happened, as I'm looking at my other screen, more people tweeted at James Gunn after this saying, well, here's the list I wrote for Collider for the characters we'd like to see in the DCU. And James Gunn then replied saying, I have to quit, saying how many, as people are going to be able to cross-reference and figure out exactly who is who. But you'll see some of these characters, and a couple of them are very important very early on. Probably not who you expect. Maybe people would expect Nightwing to be really important early on. But surprise, surprise, it might not be Nightwing, and maybe it's Cassandra Cain. Or maybe Static. Again, I'm kind of shooting in the dark right now, but it's just interesting how he said. You'll see some of these characters, and a couple of them are very important very early on into chapter 1. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Terra could be one of them, because I'm pretty adamant that we are getting a Titans team up in the future. And James Gunn, I've kept my eye on it. He has been teasing Deathstroke on several occasions. Now, I'm pretty confident, especially with all the other teasers, like how he's enjoyed Young Justice, and, we're going to be getting Nightwing. At some point, I think we will get a Titans team up, and I don't think it's going to be a carbon copy of, particular Titans stories like Judas Contract or anything like that. But if Deathstroke is going to be involved, maybe Terra could be coming in very early on. Maybe it's reference that she's joined the Titans. Maybe it's a bit of infiltration. I don't know. But let's move on. We'd love to know your thoughts on that. The next thing we need to talk about, and this is some interesting stuff that went down on Twitter, is to talk about Superman's age in Superman Legacy, and Batman even. So when a fan asked how old would the new actor for Batman be, early 30s, he wonders, Gunn responds, he hasn't been cast yet. So this is when some other fans chimed in on that thread on Twitter, just asking about, or saying they knew Batman's age. Others saying, well, no, James Gunn didn't say anything. All leading to the point of another user saying, yeah, but Gunn's words were that he was a couple years older than Superman. Might not be exactly 30, but it's in between it, not more than that. So again, a lot of fans turning what they've heard from reports, or maybe even Gunn himself, which has been ambiguous, into a bit of, I would suppose statements, which isn't always necessarily true, even though I get carried away with my own speculation as well. I do get it. Gunn then felt kind of forced to reply at that point, and this is where he says, yeah, but people are speculating about both ages. And this is the interesting wording, all I ever said was Superman was younger than his 40s, and Batman might be a couple years older than Superman. Wow. You know, and that's when some other fans were just like, wait, what? I thought he said 25 years old, with Gunn once again replying, nope, it keeps getting repeated, but I never said that. Now, I have backtracked the 25 years old comment, and it goes back to the Hollywood Reporter's coverage of the DCU slate reveal on January 31st. I believe they put out this article just kind of, covering the whole slate reveal and some other bits and bobs. And for some reason, they said in this paragraph, you know, at the end of a James Gunn quote, but this Superman is not Henry for a number of reasons. And then in parentheses there, the Hollywood Reporter say Gunn's Superman is a younger version, said to be around 25. And then as usual with these major trades, again, I'm always going to put this out there. Yes, they are major trades for a reason. They have sources that a lot of little scoopers out there on Twitter who say they know everything sometimes. Maybe they get the odd thing right, but ultimately they're a major trade for a reason. They do have some connections, but they don't always have everything right. And James Gunn seems to be repelling the idea that Superman is 25. So the Hollywood Reporter in that comment in parentheses there just saying Gunn's Superman is a younger version, said to be around 25. It seems to be the Hollywood Reporter's total speculation. And ever since then, you know, we've been seeing on Twitter, social media, comment sections of my videos just saying that Superman is around 25. And I think, you know, the word of mouth spreads there. And people take that as the actual Bible, the gospel truth about this new Superman and Superman Legacy. But either way, that doesn't really seem to be the case specifically. Not that he won't be in his younger years, as James Gunn did say, but the new wording is the most fascinating thing here. Let's get back to that quote with regards to Batman and Superman's age. This is the most clarity we've gotten since hearing about these new projects. So he said, "All I ever said was Superman was younger than in his 40s, and Batman might be a couple of years older than Superman." This could be inflammatory to some of the die-hard Cavill fans, in my opinion. And a part of me kind of understands how it can be viewed in this way. And if you don't know what I'm talking about here, if you want to read into this quote deeply enough, him saying all I ever said was Superman was younger than his 40s, well, younger than his 40s could be 37. Like, I'm not saying he will be 37, but the matter of fact is, all I ever said was Superman was younger than in his 40s. And that's what he meant by in his younger years. And younger than the 40s means any number below, below 40, right? So even 35 would be younger than his 40s. But going back to the Cavill inflammatory thing I was teasing just then, I think a lot of people would be kind of pissed off if this new Superman and Superman Legacy was, let's say, 36, 35, maybe even 34. People would be like, well, why didn't you just keep Cavill then? Now, to play devil's advocate there, we don't know. Let me just get this clear, that this Superman's, you know, even though what I just said about that quote is younger than the 40s could still mean 38, 37, 36, 35, whatever. He could still be 29 to 33. And that's fine, in my opinion. And to play devil's advocate, to get back on that track, Henry Cavill is 39, and probably by the time this new Superman Legacy movie rolls in production, he's going to be 40. This 8 to 10 year plan would propel Henry Cavill into the future of being 50 years old, which could, to be fair, age him nicely into a Kingdom Come Superman-esque role. And then that seems to be something James Gunn likes teasing a lot on social media. With the whole devil's advocate not keeping Henry Cavill thing because of the new vision that James Gunn has, even if he is 34, I do still see an argument there for like 33, 34 is still different from 39, 40 when you're actually filming the movie, and then carrying on being that Superman until you're 50 at the end of Chapter 1. Because if you're like 33, you're going to be 43 at the end of the 10-year plan, and that is kind of a different vision for a Superman. All I'm saying is, at the face value, on the bare minimum face value, if a younger Superman, as James Gunn says it, say the quote one more time, all I ever said was Superman was younger than his 40s? Well, if this new actor for Superman is even 4 years away from Henry Cavill's age, I don't think people are going to be happy there. Especially, and despite what I just said about new visions, especially when you are maintaining some castings from the previous DCEU. Prime example being Peacemaker cast, Viola Davis is Amanda Waller. etc., etc. Regardless of all of that talk, because you can go down all those different alleyways or rabbit holes of speculation and what this could mean and what the fans might feel about it, I always felt like Superman being 25 is a bit too young. I mean, I'm 28, and, you know, maybe I'm being a bit biased to my own age here. I always felt like before we got this latest clarity with James Gunn saying all he ever said was Superman was younger than his 40s, meaning that's what he meant by a younger years Superman, is that 28 to 33 felt like if you wanted to do a younger years one, you know, that's okay. You know, I still feel like 20s is kind of young, but yeah, 28 to 33, especially when you have a 10-year plan, you know, 28 to 38 or 33 to 43 after the 2 chapters, after the 8 to 10 years, seems believable. But 25 to 35, I don't know, just a little newbie 25-year-old Superman, it just seems almost a bit too young. But that being said, if I do remember correctly, Brandon Routh in Superman Returns, which I think released 2006, he was 25 to 27 years old, like 27 being the peak, I believe, of whatever that, you know, he would have been at that time. So that's actually pretty important to remember. So no matter what you think about Superman Returns, you know, Brandon Routh didn't look like super young. He looked kind of young, but he was still like 27-ish, maybe even like 25 to 26-ish when he was filming it. So, you know, that is something to remember that can work as a mid-20s one. But yeah, I don't know if this is going to worry people, because James Gunn just specifically ruling out that Superman, all he ever meant by that was that he would be younger than his 40s, and that Batman might be a couple of years older than Superman in that instance, could get people worried that, okay, well, if you're saying that Superman was younger than in his 40s, then God, I know Cavill's 39, but if you're going to cast somebody mid-30s or so, could you not have kept him if you know, if Viola Davis and other people were staying? You know, that's going to be the thing. But I've still got a feeling that this new Superman will be my age, roughly 28 to 33, maybe 34. Okay, guys, so last couple of bits in this video, just interesting stuff that we didn't know before with regards to, you know, how long Superman Legacy has been in development, and how this actually comes before even Dwayne Johnson pushing Henry Cavill into Black Adam, and it almost comes across a bit confusing. So a fan posted a screenshot from James Gunn's Instagram story that he posted saying, "Hi James, could you please clarify this? Is this referring to Man of Steel 2 with Cavill that you now changed to Superman Legacy, or was Superman Legacy a different project altogether?" Now, in the screenshot that James Gunn put on his Instagram story that states the DCU's first chapter is being fast-tracked, well, he responded to that saying, not that fast-tracked really, since this and Superman Legacy were both in development before we took over as DCU Studios chiefs. So this opened up that question of the user asking, hey, could you kind of please clarify this? And Gunn replies saying Superman Legacy was always a separate project. And another user then was just like, well, gotcha. I think there was some confusion, being you said Superman Legacy was there before you and Peter came in. And Gunn replied to that saying, it was. Like, I was hired to write Superman Legacy over 6 months ago. So obviously, as a result, people are kind of like, well, why did Cavill have a cameo in Black Adam as, you know, the Henry Cavill Superman, if James Gunn was hired over 6 months ago to write Superman Legacy, which would have placed that to be in August of 2022, right? Before he even came in as DC Studios co-chief in November. It's a big mess. Like, a lot of you kind of already know this story for the most part. It's just interesting that we found out that James Gunn already kind of had the position of writing Superman Legacy in August of 2022 before Black Adam came out, and before he was even co-head of DC Studios with Peter Safran. I'm sure by then that he had some idea that these talks were happening for him to become the co-head of DC Studios. But yeah, all of that other stuff with The Rock and Black Adam and Henry Cavill coming back in and announcing that he was coming back as Superman for the future of DC movies, it's just really weird to consider that happening from The Rock's department when in Warner Brothers, you know, James Gunn was penning a treatment for Superman Legacy. And whoever signed off on that, I know The Rock had a big part to do with it, but if it was Michael DeLuca and Pam Abdi, knowing that James Gunn was working on Superman Legacy and knowing that he was likely in talks to become the new head of DC Studios, why did you let Dwayne Johnson bring back Henry Cavill for something that you couldn't really assure fans that it was going to continue. And now you have a movie with him in the final part of the movie, and that's never going to happen. It's such a weird situation, and it is very much so a thing where Warner Brothers are going to Warner Brothers, you know? Anyway, continuing on with a couple of other tweets, another user asks, how far are you in Superman Legacy script? And Gunn responds, very far. Once again, given everything we've spoken about in this video, it makes sense. You know, if he's been working on it since August 2022, it actually makes sense why the movie is slated for 2025. Like, he must have a very, I mean, as he says himself, he's very far into the Superman Legacy script. He's been working on it for over 6 months. So, yeah, and another user asked, do you like crypto? He says, no. I love crypto. Now, don't get too excited there. I mean, never say never. And lastly, a user asked, does Wonder Woman have a future in your plans? Or is she going to be abandoned for a long time? And he just says yes and no. So yes to, does Wonder Woman have a future in your plans? And no to, is she going to be abandoned for a long time? And also this goes back to the news of what we had a while ago with how there was, I believe, some major trades saying Wonder Woman will not be featured in the first 3 years of the DCU, and James Gunn said that's not true. So I guess that means she is going to be featured in the first 3 years. But then, given the projects that we've had announced, you know, Paradise Lost is apparently a prequel Game of Thrones-y kind of drama thing going on Themyscira before Wonder Woman's time. So this video, the more answers we get, very intriguing stuff about the 4 characters. I mean, but even if I didn't get every single one of them right, you'd have to think some are a safe bet like Nightwing. The age, and how James Gunn said that, all I meant by this was that Superman wouldn't be in his 40s. Oh, okay. You know, there's just a lot of interesting things that we've learned here, but still, lots of questions that come out of these answers. So let me know your thoughts about all of this down in the comments below, guys. As always, I love reading your responses, whether you agree with me, disagree with me, or expand upon it all in general. Do like the video if you did enjoy it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're brand new here. Around 60+% of you come back each and every video and you're not actually subscribed. So maybe today is the day you hit subscribe. That would be fantastic, trying to reach 200K. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.